It's by truckers for truckers. This is the Channel 19 Experience. Let's hit the road.
This week, we've got, I think, probably my first returning guest, Mike Ritzema, Superior Trucking Payroll Service.
Excellent.
Two in
Yes.
a row. Yes, I got it.
The
Um,
name and the company both done well.
I'm trainable. I'm coachable. So yeah, so Mike's back. Last time we were together, we talked about 1099s and all the fun nuances around 1099s and what's real, what's fiction, and how you should be thinking about that, whether you're on the driver's side of it or on the employer side of it. And so this week we wanted to talk about per diem and the another kind of nebulous area in people's minds that hopefully we can provide a little clarity around. I'm an old guy, um, and when I started and kind of up until the end of my truck driving career, per diem was something that you just basically took whatever the base rate was from the IRS, like $50, $55, I can't remember what it ended at, and you looked through your logbook and counted up how many days you were not at home, and you got your total number of days, let's call it 250, 300. And then you got, I believe, some kind of percentage. Like you could take 75% of the $55 and times however many days, and that was your deduction. But times have changed. And so it's a different sort of animal right now. So that's why we wanted to talk with Mike and kind of get the lowdown on the realities and myths of per diem. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to be here. This is my very favorite topic that I ever get to talk about. And I get excited because we can change lives with this. I'm telling you, for the drivers and for the owners, for everybody. This is such a big thing. And I'm always shocked how that people don't know about it, but that's just because it's native to me. But it's okay. Now this is how we learn. And so, we can change somebody's life today, just in the next 20, 30 minutes, whatever it's going to be.
And not
So I'm
even just
super.
like let's say a small fleet or
Hmm.
even a large fleet, right?
Hmm.
But even the guy who's in one single truck owner operator who's paying himself through an S-Corp or something like
Hmm.
that, this has an impact for them too.
Anybody who gets a W-2 gets it. The 1099 people are still the same way that they were. It's 80%. You were really close on the percentage. It's 80% deductible. And it's now up to $80 a day. So
Oh,
it's
wow,
gone up
yeah.
quite a bit. It went up from 69 to 80 last October. So yeah, the 1099 people stayed the same, the people that are the legit owner operators. But one of the things you talked about is how it's changed since you were in a truck. When the big tax law change happened in 2017, 2018, they took away that deduction. And so they increased the standard deduction. They did a whole lot of things, but that deduction went away and it was a big deal. And so
Right.
now but you can still get it if your trucking company pays it to you. If the person who issues you the W-2 runs it through the paycheck or something like that, then you still get the money tax free. And that's the big win.
Awesome. So how does it work? Like what's the setup? Like if I'm a driver and someone is coming at me with say, "Hey, here's how we do payroll here. It has a per diem. It's not the same way as if you were working for another fleet that doesn't do the per diem." What does that look like and what does that really mean to the driver?
Well, the process is in a nutshell that let's make up a hypothetical paycheck here just to put numbers behind it. A driver is getting 50 cents a mile and they drove 2,500 miles because it's easy math, so that's good for me. $1,250. And without per diem, you would just tax it from there, take out the FICA, federal income tax, state income tax, get to a net, all the other deductions, whatever that you got to
Yeah.
do. With per diem, if this driver was gone 5 days, if they were on the road 5 days, then instead of paying them $1,250 in wage, they're basically going to get paid $850 in wage and $400 in reimbursement for meals and incidentals. So what that does is you don't get taxed on that $400. And that's the highest tax bracket you're going to have for the IRS. If your state is in what I would call a progressive tax bracket system, where the more you earn, the higher percentage you pay, you're also lopping off the highest part of that one, and you're not paying the Social Security and Medicare on it.
So the driver's not paying the Social Security on it and all the other those standard deductions that come out of not to mix terms here, but the other typical deductions that you see in your paycheck for unemployment and all those other things, you wouldn't see that on the $400 portion. You would see it on the 850. Also,
Yes,
on the employer side, they would not see their half of those shared expenses, essentially, of matching the Social Security and things like that.
absolutely correct. That the employer would not have to pay the Social Security and they wouldn't have to pay workers' comp insurance on it. So
Hmm.
that's for the real win for them. Workers' comp insurance as a broad generalization, and there are crazy wild rates both ways. I like to use 8.5% as an average. And
Yeah.
so you've got for the payroll tax side on the employer, I don't ever count the unemployments because I figure you're going to run those up anyway. They're usually on a limited wage base. So
Hmm.
in Michigan, it's $9,000. So the driver's going to make over 9,000 net of per diem anyway. But just if you just use the FICA tax, that's 7.65%, and then the uh, workers' comp is another 8.5%. Again, about your mileage may vary on that, but you're looking at over 16% that you can save
Yeah.
on that $400. That's $64 at 16% flat. You pay a little bit, a hair more in income tax. I roll through all the details on my website, but that I don't know. We need to go into it, but they're going to save $35 easily per driver per week. For the trucking company, the driver themselves, their paycheck's going to be $100 bigger.
Right.
That's the biggest raise they ever get. So imagine drivers, imagine what you do if you had an extra $100 in your check every week.
Yeah.
Like,
Same job, same everything else. But
same
there is
everything
one
else.
difference, right?
There are
On,
differences,
yeah.
absolutely. Um, one of them is because you're paying less into Social Security, you will get less when you retire from Social Security. That I always point that out because this isn't a magic elixir in the sense of it's cure all and no pain at all. You will have that. My advice is get with an investment person. Even if you put away a quarter of the savings as a driver, you'd come out ahead.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. But it's still but $25 away for retirement, $75 a week for you to keep. I mean, just on the $75. If we put away that 25%, $3,900 a year. It's a
Right.
lot of dough.
It
So
is.
that's what makes me so excited is truck drivers all over the country work crazy hard and work crazy hours. You just do. I could never do it. I don't know how you guys do it, but you do. And so if I can make their lives a little bit better, and I think $4,000 a year makes their lives quite a bit better,
Yeah.
I love it. And the fact that the trucking company also makes a little bit in it, they'll make 15 to $1,800 a year back on average. It's just such a win.
Yeah. But I mean, we're in a business of single digit margins, right? So
If
every little bit helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also shows too, as an employer, you're showing that you want to give your drivers as much as you can. You want them to have the financial success that you'd want them to have. Look, we're going to pay you per diem. It should be I'm going to say this slowly and clearly for the audience. If you pay per diem, it needs to be in your driver ad. The drivers that want it will know it and they will understand it and they will come see you for it. I talk to lots of people all over the country and they don't even put it in their ad. And I'm like, you guys are killing me, man. Why are you not telling the driver about $100 a week they're going to get?
Yeah, and but also what comes with that is being armed with the explanation of how it
Hmm.
works because truck drivers, we've been on the receiving end of all kinds of complicated, cooked up schemes of driver pay and every other thing that looks great on the surface. And then 3 months in, or when your tax man gets a hold of it, you find out, yeah, that was not a good idea. You should have came and asked me first. But this is a
Oh,
legitimate program.
yes, absolutely. On our website, truckingpayroll.com, we've got a whole page dedicated to per diem. They call it a landing page. And we talk about it all the time. And we've even got an article that links to the IRS regs about it. They're called revenue procedures. They usually cite the one from the year before, but it goes back and you can get to the original one very quickly, and it'll talks all about it. We also have we have a ton of articles on there. Things like if you're a trucking company, how can you roll this out? Because rolling it out is the key if you're not paying it now.
Yeah.
Because as you just mentioned, drivers have heard what we will call dubious pay schemes before, and they've been burned by them. I will go back to what I say to everyone is if you ever want to have a driver talk to you for 45 minutes, just ask them how their former company stuck it to them and then
Yeah.
buckle up because and they're gonna have real stories.
Yep.
So this is not one of those. And so and I see that on socials. I'll post an article on LinkedIn or on TikTok and someone will comment on it, go, "Oh, that's a big scam. It's all illegal and all that kind of stuff." Probably because they got stuck by somebody
Mhm.
on something. And I'm like, it's really not. And I'll try and talk to them because I'm so glad they're reaching out. I'm just so glad that the driver's engaged and I get the chance to try and make their life better. And even if they end up not disagreeing with me, at least I want them to see that someone can talk to them and acknowledge what they're saying. And it's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, circling back to your comment about how it does impact your Security contribution, which will ultimately end up impacting whatever that payout is down the road,
Hopefully.
if assuming there's a payout.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Um, but I mean, that's true of everything you would do to reduce your tax bill, right? Like if you're an owner operator and you buy a new bumper and you expense that bumper and it reduces your overall tax liability, the point was to reduce your tax bill. All of those acts also reduce your eventual payout in Social Security. So it's not any different than any other deduction you take, whether your standard deduction or any of that. All that stuff
Mhm.
plays into Social Security contributions that you make today, which affects payouts later on when you're at retirement age.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were an owner operator your whole career and you figured out a way to never show a profit, I don't want to know how you did it, but let's just say you did. Your Social Security check's going to be zero. That's the easiest math there ever is. You weren't in the system.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you do have to pay in to get out, but at the same time, if you know that your Social Security will be usually per diem is about 25% of the wage neighborhood of maybe up to a third, even 40%, depending on the situation. But just know that your Social Security would, if you did it your whole entire career, beginning to end, it would be 25% less. But if you're putting away that money that I was talking about in the beginning, with just put it into an IRA, do whatever, a financial tool, and they're readily available, you're going to come out so far ahead. And that's also
Yeah.
going to be real money versus if you're in the 20. I would love to see a poll right now of 20-year-olds and how many think they're going to collect Social Security, and it's probably really low. So, or the retirement age will be like 106. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Even if you just take a portion, put it towards some IRA, some, managed mutual fund, something like that.
yes,
It's your money, it's in your account, it's not subject to politicians' whims as to how they bankrupt the Social Security trust fund or lack thereof. Um, and it's an asset on your books, right?
yeah, and it's going to be there. Yeah, like
Right.
that's the amazing thing of it. Now I know that a lot of people won't actually take the advice of investing the money, and their Social Security will be less, but you should have saved up more money. You're gonna have the extra $100 a week. You can save up. You can find out. You don't have to do it through an IRA. I mean, you should do it through an IRA, but you wouldn't have to. You could do it just having money in your piggy bank. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
just grow your piggy bank and just be aware of it. Awareness is the key. And my experience has been with a lot of trucking companies, especially small ones, is that they are so cash sensitive that the extra $100 a day if they were a driver, or the extra, you know, if $1,500 to $2,000 a year for each driver that you employ, that you're going to get that money now, and that's going to be more
Yeah.
important to you anyway.
Yeah,
And
for on
so,
the business side, it's reducing your payroll expense that immediate week, right? The week you start, you're going to save money. This isn't some scheme you
yep,
gotta wait till you file taxes or anything else. Like the savings is immediate.
you
And
you
the
get it.
impact to your drivers is immediate on the next payroll you run.
Yep, you get it today. The insurance savings comes out in your audit or when you renew, because you're going to have lower wage.
Hmm.
But either way is good. Historically, a lot of people that use traditional work comp tend to underestimate their payroll so they can put less of a deposit. Well, this might actually make it be accurate, so that would be good too. Yeah, so that would be nice. And even you were talking before about when you did per diem on your taxes. In a lot of places that helped, but it wasn't nearly as much help as what the system, like paying it through the trucking company. So if they have, because there was all these tax laws that are going to change this year. That's all the tax cuts from the one we're talking about from 2017, 2018, TJCA, I think is what the acronym was for it. Um, those all expire, so they're going to have to renew them, and they're going to throw in some changes on different things. So if they
Sure.
decided to lower the standard deduction and make unreimbursed employee expenses, which is what that was, redeductible, you still were paying FICA on it all, Social Security. And for a lot of states don't itemize. I'm in Michigan; they don't itemize here, so you weren't getting those back. But now, because per diem is before we even get to taxing, you're getting the deduction there that you wouldn't get if you took it yourself, even if you could.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key points too to walk away from as a driver. There's no other way to take advantage of this unless your employer is doing it this way, right? You can't, there's the old way is gone. You can't itemize because even a company driver back in the day,
Hmm.
they could utilize this deduction, but now you cannot in that method. You have to, your employer has to do it. So when you're looking at comparing apples to apples from a payroll, if one company's saying they're paying you 50 cents a mile and they don't do per diem, that is not going to be the same outcome on your paycheck as going to somebody who pays 50 cents per mile and does per diem, right? The bottom
Yeah,
line is going to be different.
$100
Yep.
different. Yep, absolutely. And I know a lot of the cognitive disconnect or whatever, I don't know the neurology phrasing, but is that the idea that the company, the trucking company and the drivers are oppositional forces as far as money goes. Money given to drivers is money taken away from the company. Money taken from drivers is money given to the company. Well, this isn't the case with per diem. They both get money. The money comes from the IRS and the insurance agency, neither of
Yep.
whom we're that really worried about as far as priorities. We'd rather have the company succeed and the drivers succeed. So some people might be like, well, how can we both win? That just seems to not work. And that's why they might think it's a scam. And
Yep.
no, you guys win, the IRS loses most of it, and then the insurance carrier loses on their work comp premium. We're okay with
Yep.
that.
Yeah. Nobody's crying over those agencies.
They'll stay open.
Yeah. All right. So when you're thinking about this as your small fleet, I mean, we covered some of the topics. Is there anything else to consider as far as if you're a small fleet? You talked a little bit about just kind of the change management of it. Like, don't just spring this on your fleet and go, hey, guys, by the way, next paycheck we're doing per diem. That's not a good way to inform people that you're doing something like this because there's going to be questions.
No, I agree. Drivers are generally skeptical because of the experiences they've had. And I understand why they would be skeptical. And so you want to roll it out right. I would advise rolling it out as soon as you can. Don't wait till the end of the year. Do it now. Start saving that money now. Start giving that money to the drivers in their paycheck now. And then the next thing I would do is I would meet with all my drivers as much as I could do it feasibly. I understand your drivers may be all over the country. It might be one-on-one conversations. It might be something the next time they're in, because it's better if it's in person. And then the real trick is say, here's your current paycheck right now, this week, 2,500 miles, 50 cents a mile. Here's the check we want to switch you to that has per diem in it, and it's $100 more at the bottom line. Which check do you want?
Yeah.
Which one would you rather have? And if they're gonna pick the probably the bigger check. I mean, unless they're against their own self-interest, they're gonna pick the bigger check. And so that's the way I would roll it out to them, would be, look, this is, you can literally take their check. We've done this for people where, especially for clients of ours, we'll give them a check with and without per diem and show them and say, look, we'll highlight the difference for them. Here's where it's going. Here's the differences, and here's the math, and here's where you end up.
Yeah,
So,
or even put together some, an information packet about
mhm,
like here's your last four paychecks, like not just
mhm,
do a one spot, but here's your last four checks. Here's a month's worth of difference for you, and also be able to do, or even maybe go year to date and go, if we continue on, let's just say the first 6 months, because we're almost to the midpoint of the year here. If we do what we did January through June for the rest of the year, here's what we're going, what would have paid you. And I mean, every one of these business should have an accountant, a tax preparer.
mhm.
Get that person in there to show them if you're just doing a standard filing, 1040, doing your taxes that way as a driver, here's the difference that it would be, and be able to talk through all the things we just talked about, right? And give that information to them, and don't try to shove it down there. Don't try to convince them in the moment. As a former truck driver, like I got to drive around a little bit. I'm gonna need a couple hundred miles to digest this and think about, work through what
Talk to
my
my
objections
friends.
are. Yeah, make some phone
Uh-huh.
calls, phone a friend, phone my wife, phone a tax guy, my
Yep.
tax guy, and go, is this guy blowing smoke here? Or is this like, are we all going to jail for this later? And that, like give them an opportunity to work through it and ask questions in a way that a driver would.
Yep.
And
Absolutely. The driver should see this. They won't see it as a good thing necessarily right away, because almost every change that every trucking company drops on them is unfavorable to the driver.
Yeah.
And so this is one where it's not. And so we want to explain it. We want to walk them through it. Uh, yeah, I would, and one thing I would, the other point I would absolutely tell people is if you have a driver that is dead set against this, they don't care about the math. They don't care about anything. They're just convinced that it's a horrible idea because someone told them, whatever.
Yeah.
Don't just let them opt out. Just don't have them have any per diem days. And so that's, you don't want to lose a good driver over this.
So
Right? Good drivers are hard to find.
absolutely. Yeah, you don't want to die on that hill with a good
Mm-mm.
driver. I was going to ask you because you see this a lot dealing with the fleets and their payroll.
Mhm.
Like things like 34-hour restarts, or like how are they tabulating the days for
Yeah,
that time period?
that's a great question. It's really easy. When did you leave? Okay, I'm going to make the assumption here you have a company that has one terminal and the trucks all go in and basically in and out of there.
Hmm.
So it's not somebody like Schneider who's got terminals all over the country or
Yeah.
something like that. Um, yeah, when did they leave? So they left today to go. I'm in Michigan. They left today to go to California. They deliver out in California on Tuesday. They do their 34-hour reset, reload Thursday morning, get back here Sunday. Well, let's see, today's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They got 10 days per diem. It's from when they leave to when they get back.
Okay. So no matter what happens in between.
Yeah, if they have a breakdown, if they get, because it's meals and incidentals while you're on the road and you're still on the road.
Yeah.
And so it's you get all of that. And so yeah, you can't, I will tell you too, just as a quick thing to watch out for, you can't claim 365 days on the road a year. There's some of you that probably work that. The IRS would then tell you that your home was the truck and you were home every night. It's
That's a good
happened.
gotcha to know.
Yeah. I tell people, yeah, once you more than, I mean, I'm not saying you can't have a week with 7 days when you're out, because that absolutely happens. I
Yep.
mean, if you're going from Maine to San Diego, right? Like you're going to do the round trip before you turn in your bills, you're absolutely going to have
Oh, yeah,
seven
we
days
got
per diem
plenty of
every week.
listeners who are gone for months at a time.
Yeah, right. And so you're going to have those. Just be home for a while. Because it's going to end up, it shows up on your W-2, but not in a way that's taxable. It's in what's called box 12, like where they put your 401k and all that stuff, and your
Hmm.
health insurance if you're an ALE, applicable large employer. But yeah, you absolutely have to do that. And the trick to actually implementing this as a trucking company is you figure out their wage, you subtract out the per diem, you tax them out, and then you add it back in. We do that automatically for people. If you're using, I'm just going to use QuickBooks as an example, you're going to have to do it manually. And you're going to have to make sure you do both sides. And it's tricky because none of those guys are built for that, which is fine because they take care of donut shops and doctors' offices and all that too.
Sure.
Yeah. But it can be done and it can save you a lot of money and it's worth looking into.
Yeah, I guess my other kind of the other angle of this too is the folks who are kind of like my brother, right? Like he's an owner operator
Hmm.
and he's set up as an S Corp.
Excellent.
And so he pays himself W-2.
Yes.
And so, he has the business taxes and that side of things. So,
Hmm.
and then he's an employee of his S Corp.
Hmm.
So in this case, he owns all parts of the equation,
Hmm.
right? And so he can go and get that arranged for the part. He's got a company that does his one employee payroll processing part,
Yep.
right? And so it's
Yep.
just a matter of getting set up. And then the benefits of both sides of that reality are he gets the smaller portion on the employer side with his S Corp and the
Hmm.
benefit on the employee side on the W-2 side as well.
Yeah, he's going to save over 5 grand a year, assuming
Yeah.
he's paying himself, assuming he's not opting out of work comp, which he might do. That's a whole separate thing. But even then, he's still saving a lot of money.
Yeah, a
And
couple, three
yeah, he
grand for
wins.
sure, right?
Yeah, he wins on both sides, which is excellent. Especially for people like your situation where it's a one employee S corp, I would tell them, yeah, pay yourself once a month because you can always just take draws any other time, and then just average out, just like as a salary, just average out your days. Figure you had 22 days a month, or say, hey, count the weekdays, or count the Tuesdays through Sundays, or whatever you want to do. However your regular schedule goes, or you can
Yeah.
just report it in into whoever does your payroll and say, pay my salary, but I had 19 days this month, or I had 23 days or 26 days or whatever, and they can
Yeah.
figure that all out for you.
Yeah, and even one benefit of, this will make people cringe, but a benefit of ELD and having electronic logs is you have a record and you don't have to page through and go find all those logbook pages and page through it that way, right? You can do it from your truck easily. You don't have to be back home in your home office looking at paperwork and digging out logbook pages. You can just do it right from their web application or mobile application and go look through the days.
You can do it from there if you have a TMS system, which again, a one truck company may not have, but some do. You can get it from your TMS too. You can just look at your report as a driver. When did I pick up? When did I deliver? And figure out the days I was home.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. It's worth doing. Again, there's so much money. And it also, speaking now it applies to everybody, but for your example, for your brother, it's a great example. He doesn't have to keep receipts for the food or any of that kind of stuff. It's considered an accountable plan. So he gets the deduction, the $80 a day, every day that he's gone without having to go, okay, here's my Burger King receipt. Here's my whatever receipt, Old Country Skillet or whatever it's called,
Yeah.
right? Like you have to keep all those. Here's my toothbrush receipt because it's for incidentals, you
Yeah.
know, you just get, and I don't know a lot of drivers. I'm sure there's some out there. Not a lot of, most drivers don't spend $80 a day.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, because it's
It's
not
your
like
money.
not before when you were only getting 80% of the 50 or whatever it
Hmm.
was, right? But even then that we all kind of know, like that was it was a great benefit because like you're not spending that much money typically. I mean, even now with inflated prices and everything costs, yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's $3.50 for a roller hot dog at the truck stop,
On sale.
on sale, two for $7. Even then, $80 is a pretty big lift to get to.
Yeah, especially because with the hours that everybody keeps, it's not like you're eating breakfast at 8 a.m. and stopping for lunch at noon and stopping for dinner at 5:30.
Yeah.
You're probably getting one big meal and a snack or something like that, and then some like snacks in your truck. And so you're not going to get to 80. The only way you're getting to $80 for most people is if the company directly reimburses you. So then you're like, screw it, I'm going to get $80.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
bring me that filet.
Not a lot of Ruth's Chris steakhouses at the truck stops.
I hadn't put that together, but I think you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, hardly, now it's not, I mean, that's one of the big gripes is just not even restaurants like the Iron Skillet and some of these other places. I mean, it's been flipped over to, fast food, get it and go, get out of here, type of meals. And so
Yeah, absolutely.
buying a big meal and sitting down and eating it all in one spot is not what it used to be.
No, no, the truck stops have their charm, and that's yeah, that's that make it an Arby's really isn't the same.
Right, right. Well, all right. Well, I mean, is there anything else? I mean, you mentioned your website,
Yeah,
to go over there for some more information, but
we have if I can highlight a couple of great, they're absolutely free. Truckingpayroll.com. We have a couple of things up in the upper right in the menu. You'll see tools or resources and things like that. One of them is a whole page about per diem. It's all the articles we have about per diem from all the different perspectives and all the videos we've done. And it's all there for the consumption. Just go use it. We also have another pull down called Trucking Success Tools. If you go there, there are some quizzes because you might want to know as a trucking company how much you'd save by paying per diem. I'll
yeah,
tell you, we had someone fill it out last night. I'm not going to go into details of who I know who it was because he had talked to me, and they had 110 trucks and had no idea about per diem. So this is not limited to, I mean, there are big companies that don't know about this and don't, because they don't have they just don't know. And why wouldn't you know? But they don't. I know when I worked there, I didn't understand it till someone explained it to me.
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, but there's a thing you can calculate how much you'll save.
Well, that's a
And
very good point, Mike. Like, I mean,
man,
I remember because I sold my last truck in 2014. And so I wasn't around for the per diem as a driver, when the changes went into effect. And my brother was driving for a company and he's telling me, yeah, this is a good deal. I'm switching over to a company and they pay per diem. And I'm like, what kind of scam company did you get hired on to, right? Like this just sounds like when's the last time the IRS went around, sat around a room and said, you know what, by God, let's make something that actually works out for somebody, especially a truck driver. And so, I thought it was a scam for years. Honestly, I was in that bucket until he showed me his paycheck and talked to me about it. And I'm like, Well, and then I would say I was probably maybe 75% convinced it wasn't a scam because I mean, like we're truck drivers, like there's almost nothing that 100% we believe is not a scam. So
Right.
we just haven't found out the other shoe hasn't dropped yet. In
We
10
haven't figured
years
it
we'll
out
find
yet, but
out.
we know
Yeah.
it's there.
Yep.
Hmm.
But I mean that this is the case like around the entire industry. Like I mean, if you haven't been closely exposed to it or had explanations about it, it tends to just sound and smell fishy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because again, it goes to that competition between the company and the driver, where if I win, you have to lose, because there's only so much of a pot of money coming in.
Yeah.
So we're going to distribute it between us. And for me to get more, you have to get less, and you're not going to do that. You're not going to come up to me and say, "Hey, let me get less money so you can win."
Exactly.
That doesn't happen that often. So but this is the way we're winning, and the other expenses are going to be less.
You
And so
mentioned
that's
something
the win.
just to clarify. You
Yeah.
mentioned so it is perfectly okay for a business to say this employee we're going to do per diem with
Mhm.
and this employee we're not.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That I mean, it'd be think of it this way for a non-trucking world. If you're a sales rep and you took out somebody for lunch and you turned in your receipt and got reimbursed, no big deal. Another salesperson takes out somebody for lunch, loses the receipt, forgets to turn it in, whatever. They don't get reimbursed. It's the same
Hmm.
thing. It's just reimbursements for expense. So the fact that the other guy didn't turn his receipt in, I'm not going to reimburse him for lunch if he's my salesman. The guy who did turn his receipt gets reimbursed.
Well, this might this not exactly applicable to truck drivers, but
Mhm.
maybe there are employees at these trucking companies who do some things that it is applicable. Like for example, I just got back from Oklahoma City. I went over to the corporate office and
Mhm.
I do this. I'll be back there in 2 weeks. So sometimes 2 times a month, sometimes one time a month. In different parts of my career, I traveled 40 weeks out of the year. Is theoretically, could I ask the employer to go? Can I be
Th-
paid per diem because I'm not at
There
home?
is a way to do it. And you bring up a good point, and I'm glad you brought it up. The per diem that we're talking about under the IRS, they have a section called special rules for the transportation industry as far as meals and incidentals and things go. And
Mm,
that's where this $80 a day comes from. It's all through the United States, it's $80 a day. Now, somebody like you who say was traveling to a city for a day or 2 days or 3 days, you can ask your company to do it based on the rate for that city. Every city has a different rate because buying lunch in Fargo, North Dakota is not the same price as buying lunch in San Francisco, California.
right.
So there are different rates for everywhere. There's a standard rate if they don't have a rate, but they have different ways of doing it. So you could ask your employer to do it, but your employer doesn't have to do it. That's between you and the employer. The same thing
Gotcha.
with the trucking company doesn't have to pay you per diem. You can't, if you're a driver hearing all this and going, I want per diem right now, you can't just bust his door down or her door down and say, I demand per diem. You owe me this. That's not going to go well. But you can say to them, hey, it's in our best interest. You're going to make some money and I'm going to make some money if we do this thing. Read this guy's website or go listen to this podcast, man. You're going to think I'm a hero because you got 20 trucks. I'm going to save you 30 grand a year for you, and each of the drivers gets about 4 or 5 grand. So we're all going to win together, and you can be the hero, right? That's one of my things
Hmm.
that I like about this is like the accounting department gets to be the hero because we are never the hero. We're
Right.
always the ones delivering bad news. Well, sorry, you shouldn't have taken that load that only paid $500 to go across country. What? We get called bean counters and things, which is fine, but it's yeah, we get to be the hero here. We can save all these people money. But yeah, to be in transportation industry, which is what I wanted to get to, the qualifications for paying per diem to truck drivers. There's two qualifications and only two. Number one, they have to be subject to hours of service laws.
Okay.
Every
I'm
truck
not
driver
it.
is,
Okay.
right. Even if they
Um,
even if you're in the 150-mile bubble and you don't have the device, you're still subject to the hours.
sure,
You can't
sure.
drive 27 straight hours just around the city. Number two, they have to be in multiple meals and incidental markets. That means they have to go from one. It's not a magic number for miles, but if you leave one city and go to another one, and that's not part of your suburbia,
Hmm.
if you're in Houston and you go to San Antonio, you're fine. If you're in Detroit and you go to Grand Rapids, you're fine. If you're, plenty. If you go from Detroit to Toledo, you're fine. So you just have to be in different markets, and that's the requirements.
Okay.
So I would caution people from, if you to use my Detroit Toledo example, they're about an hour drive if you hit traffic right. If somebody goes from Detroit to Toledo and back once in a day, I wouldn't pay them a per diem day for that because they didn't miss any meals. Now, if they just shuttled all day, they got up at 6 in the morning and shuttled until they ran out of hours. Yeah, I would assert that.
Gotcha.
But they do the examples they use generally send people overnight. It's really written for over the road drivers, but the IRS doesn't know how to define that. So yeah, somebody that sleeps in the truck or somebody that could sleep in the truck or something like that, but they don't get into that. They just use multiple meals in incidental markets as their guideline.
So did you say like let's say I'm trying to compare apples to apples
Hmm.
for myself as I'm a
Hmm.
I'm a driver and I'm especially we've talked about it can be complicated trying to understand like what is the overall pay package for company A versus company B.
Hmm.
If I'm trying to compare, hey, this company says they do 50 cents a mile and they don't do per diem, and this company says they do 48 cents per mile and they do per diem, which one's a better deal for me? Is there a calculator on your website or anything for them to kind of figure out?
Uh, there's not, because there's so many other scenarios that go into it to
Mm.
determining a paycheck and net pay. What state they're in, if they're in a taxing city, if they have 401k or pre-tax health insurance. I mean, all those things factor into it. Just health insurance alone is a big enough thing to swing that. If the 50 cent a mile guy with no per diem paid 100% of your health insurance, the
Yeah,
48
yeah.
cent a mile, right? Like, so I'm just saying there's all these other things that go into it. Uh, I would tell them, hit me up on a social and I'll walk them through it. But
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Because I mean, let, it's funny because there are all these other things that play into the bottom line of the value of working for company A or working for company B.
Hmm.
But the number that sticks in everybody's head is cents per mile or, percentage, like those two key numbers,
Yeah. They
regardless
top
of the
line
other stuff.
gross.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so,
absolutely.
yeah, like you said, there's still something that's going to hurt a little bit. Even if I was making 50 cents a mile at one company, I tell my buddy, hey, I'm going to this other company. Oh, yeah, what do they pay? 45 cents a mile. But all my benefits are included. It still hurts the ego a little bit. I mean,
Yep.
it's funny with all the changes in the regulations. So I work for a company that had a bunch of people who were salaried workers, but the salary was quite low,
Hmm.
right? And so because of the changes that went into effect, I don't know, maybe like a year or so ago,
Hmm.
and then they keep changing the threshold, bumping it up. They basically made everybody convert over to hourly pay because there was really no justification for being a salaried employee other than certain benefits for the employer. Like,
Right.
hey, we could ask you to work on Saturdays and it doesn't cost us anymore because you're salary and not hourly, and I don't have to pay you overtime or, extra hours for that benefit to me as a business owner.
Hmm.
But it's funny though, even though the regulation was written really to protect workers from these scenarios that weren't in their best interest. There were people who asked, there was a certain pride of being a salaried
Hmm.
employee,
Their status.
the status to it, right?
Hmm.
As opposed to, how much do you make? I make 16 bucks an hour. Or how much do you make? I make $32,000 a year. Essentially the same thing, but
Yes.
there was some internal intrinsic value to the $32,000 a year statement that people were like, I kind of like being salary. And the reality was is because it was a federal regulation, right? There was no optionality here like this one where you can, kind of pick and choose. Hey, if you don't want to be per diem, then you don't have to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned like the salary thing, but yeah, there was certain kind of cachet to being a salaried employee. When really you're saying, I'm willing to work extra for free.
Right.
That's what you're saying. And I would say too, and if I encounter anybody who's like that and they go, if two people were next to each other, one said, I make $32,000 a year, and the other person said, I make $16 an hour, I'd say, you also make $32,000 a year.
Right.
It's just paid in hourly sets than instead of a standard check every week.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, yeah, that's so funny that you mentioned that, because it was a big deal, and that number has been going up. There's always a chance that the current administration will lower it or do something like that. And it always gets fought in court forever. But yeah, you talk about the government having the opposite effect of what they intend. I think that's universal on both sides of the aisle and has been for my lifetime.
Yeah.
And so I can think of all the different laws, the names they give the laws, and it's usually the opposite effect. So it's,
Yeah, the one time they seem to get it right is when it directly affects them,
yeah, well,
right?
yeah, they're not subject to
Lawmakers.
their own laws.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
almost every law excludes them. So
yeah,
nice work if you can get it.
right. And yeah, by the way, we're only going to make laws about things that we don't ever personally experience. So,
Well, and to be fair, trucking is such a different thing
mm,
that you can't, it's hard for them to write laws for trucking. Even when we talked previously about W-2 versus 1099, a lot of the regulations make a lot of sense for a lot of jobs, manufacturing jobs, office jobs, restaurant jobs.
sure.
Everything seems much more clear. But for trucking, like they don't, I mean, the tools that the drivers bring, or whether they drive their own truck or not, they're never going to get into that level of detail just for trucking. You're just going to get set. It always gets set through the court, and then you find another court that goes the other way, and you figure it out. But in general, all these laws, including this special rules for the transportation industry, is the only exception where they have actual trucking laws, because otherwise they
Well,
just
except
defer
for
to.
the exclusions, right? Like in the
Yeah,
1938 Transportation Act, they basically said,
yeah.
by the way, all of our other federal labor laws, right? Like, yeah, transportation's not in that. Like,
Yeah, and it got specifically excluded in the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is why truck drivers don't get overtime. And
exactly. Yeah.
mechanics who work on trucks don't get overtime. And people who load the trucks that go into interstate commerce don't get overtime. Yeah, that's all from the FLSA, like exemption 18 or 20.
Yeah.
Theater workers, by the way, too, movie theater workers don't get it either. Just as a random trivia, one of my coworkers' children worked for one of those places, and they don't get overtime because it's like part of a whole entertainment experience or something. Like, really?
Wow.
But yeah, fun. Yeah, now everybody learns something.
Yeah, no doubt. Imagine finding that out the hard way. You know, you go to your theater worker job and you're like, sweet, Saturday shift, I'm on it, boss. Right.
Absolutely.
But
When
what it is though is a great example is I bet you every movie theater company in the country knows that and takes advantage of it in the same way
100%.
that every trucking company in America should be paying per diem and taking advantage of this.
Exactly. And this one's yeah, because it is really optional. Like the theater could still pay them overtime, but yeah, trucking companies, man, this is free money. It's also free love for your drivers, and that's really going to make you more free money. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's no good reason not to do it. Even if you're in like a captive with a really low work comp rate, so your savings are less, you still
Hmm.
should do this. It's absolutely imperative. And if I could, I want to circle back to something that you had mentioned about trucking companies and rolling it out, and you talked about the 50 cent and the 48 cent guy and all that kind of stuff. If I were a recruiter, this would be a main part of my pitch that we pay per diem to make sure you get more money, and then I would explain how it works. And even if I was a recruiter or not, if I was the person who does driver orientation, whoever that is in your company. If it's a small company,
Yeah.
it's the same person who does the invoicing and owns it and washes the trucks, right? That's you.
And be prepared to walk
Yeah.
through it. Like if you're
Write
going
it
through
higher.
your onboarding a
Yes.
driver from a company that wasn't paid per diem, like you want to be there first paycheck. Let's walk through this so there's no misconceptions or
I don't want to
misunderstandings.
surprise you.
Yeah.
Yep, we don't make jokes about money, and we don't surprise people about money because and I want and even in the orientation you have two paychecks. We're doing this thing, and this is why we're doing it, and this is what you get out of it.
Yeah.
And we want you to know now because that way it won't be a surprise later. And we're also establishing an idea that we're looking out for you. Like let's just give them some love right out of the gate. But yeah, I would have that. That's got to be clear. They shouldn't learn about it on their first paycheck.
Right.
They should learn about it before that, and you should be teaching them, and you can show them that you're looking out for them.
Yeah. And it also is a buffer against because you may get, depending, you may have taken a job at, 48 cents per mile.
Mhm.
And then the company down the road doesn't do per diem and they're going to pay 50 cents per mile.
Mhm.
You want your current drivers who you want to keep armed with the knowledge to combat any sort of sales pitch against, your pay package. And just like every company should be, I know you talk about it a lot, but and you mentioned it earlier, like if you're paying per diem, get it in your ad. If you're out there trying to recruit new drivers and you can't put per diem pay in your ad, call Mike over at Superior Trucking Payroll Service and get your butt in gear and get on per diem, people.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you were that driver interviewing in the 50 that doesn't pay per diem and 48 that does, if I'm interviewing the 50 and you say part of your interview question, what's your per diem policy?
Hmm.
It just else you're going to keep the recruiter on their toes. So that's kind of fun. And then,
Right.
right, you get kind of a little fun to mix it up with them. But then also if they say, oh, we don't pay per diem, well, why don't you pay per diem?
Right.
And see what answer they give you. That, I think that's going to tell you a lot about the company. We
Yeah.
looked at it and we know we'd save money, but we think it's too confusing for the drivers. Well, or whatever. Or we don't see the reason to do it. Okay, well, you've got 100 trucks, and we had, like I said, we had somebody fill out our per diem tool early this morning. 110-ish trucks, I think is what it was. They're going to save $175,000 a year
That's
for the
on the
company.
company side.
Yes, on the company side by switching to per diem. Man, I'm just so excited for them. Like
Yeah. Hell yeah.
$175,000.
Yes.
And each of those 110 drivers are going to save about $5,000 a year. So that's, another 550,000. Between the two, they're going to save over $700,000. That's some money.
That's big time money.
So,
Like, I mean, you think about it, flip it around in other words.
mhm.
That is, let's say you make 10% margin in your trucking business, which God
Right?
bless you, because there's
Yeah.
not a hell of a lot of them out there making
Say, they
10%
need to be your
margins.
next guest, by the way.
Right. Let's like, what's the secret here? Because, I mean, I've done consulting a long time. The best
hmm
of the best
hmm
is around in that 6 to 8%,
hmm
right? That's the
The
best of
people
the
that have it
best.
really dialed in.
World-class operators,
hmm hmm
right? So, but just to make the math simple, let's say you make 10% margin, or we can make it for half. But if it's 10% margin, in order
hmm
to do something else, in order to make that $175,000 a year,
hmm
you have to gross $1.75 million
Right.
to make that. Now, if you're at 5% margin, you've got to $3.5 million of gross revenue to net 175. This seems like a hell of a lot way to do it, a easier way to do it than figuring out how to bring in $3.5 million onto your top line revenue.
And you get to pay your drivers more.
And you get to pay your drivers more, which would
hmm
not be the case
Right.
the other
Which
way,
will
any other way.
intuitively, it will reduce your turnover because now these drivers know about per diem and they're not going to leave you for somewhere that doesn't pay it.
Yep.
They're just not going to do it. So yeah, it's such a big win. And that's why this is something we talk about all the time. And we'll talk to anybody who will have us listen because it's that crucial. Trucking is so hard. This money stuff is so hard. We're in a 3-year slump that seems like it's never, ever going to end. It will, but who knows when. Man, you can take this win right now. And I talked about the 110 truck trucking company, and that's great. But if you're a 5 truck trucking company, right? Like, man, that's a lot of work because you're the everything. You're the whole office if you're not on the road still. So,
Yep.
but even for you, just on that ratio, because he was about 1750 a truck, right? So that times 5, I just had it and lost it. Well, 8750.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna bust out a calculator, which I don't normally do. Yeah, 8750. I had it. That's $8,750 that you're gonna benefit this year. That's $160 a week right
Yep.
now. And
Yep.
your 5 drivers are each gonna get 5 grand. So that's real money to this guy. And you ask any 5 truck trucking company what they would do with $8,750, and I'm sure they'd find something.
Yeah. There's a bill to pay somewhere for sure.
Uh-huh.
Well, Mike,
Absolutely.
awesome discussion, man. So great to have you back on again, and especially on something like this that can actually make a difference for people's pocketbook right now. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Anytime I can be of help to your audience, I'm happy to do
Perfect. Mike Ritzema, everybody. Superior Trucking Payroll Service,
it.
truckingpayroll.com.
Perfect. Yep. Go there. Lots of free resources.
Awesome.